All right, so welcome to Genesis chapter 30. This chapter really pairs with the previous one to sort of neatly round out the rather tragic beginning of the 12 tribes of Israel. And additionally, it continues with this theme of exploitation. So Rachel is beautiful, and unlike Leah, she is loved by her husband, but she is unable to have children. At that time, this was a source of shame, and rather unfairly made her an object of scorn within the community. And so she takes out her pain and frustration on her husband Jacob. Then, following the pattern of the men and women that came before her, she exploits her maidservant by forcing her to have children with Jacob in her stead. The feud with Leah also continues. For when Leah sees that Rachel is having children by proxy, she too forces her female servant upon Jacob in order to add more children to her legacy. Eventually, their sons get roped into this mess when one of them finds some mandrakes in the field. These fruits were supposed to be a sort of aphrodisiac and believed to increase fertility. Leah uses them to, quote, hire her husband for the night, and this thing just goes on and on and on. The second half of the chapter details the rather abusive work environment in which Jacob served his uncle Laban. So just a few observations as we think about this. First, note that abusive and even exploitive behavior is endemic, and it flows in all directions. Just this far in Genesis, a son has abused his father, Genesis 9. A father offered his daughters up to be raped by a lustful mob, and then these same women in turn got their father drunk and raped him. That's Genesis 19. Husbands has used their wives for economic gain and self-preservation, Genesis 20 and 26. And wives have exploited their maidservants, Genesis 16 and Genesis 30. A son has deceived his father, Genesis 27. And employers have harshly manipulated their employees, Genesis 29 and 30. And all of this is wrong. All of it should be seen and acknowledged as wrong. There's no excuse for this, and there's no real free passes. Second, though, recognize that in spite of all of these failings, God's plan is not thwarted. He still called these people to himself. He still allowed them to participate in his redemptive working. The sons that are born to Leah and Rachel, even in this chapter, specifically Judah and Joseph, go on to become just towering figures that are used by God in amazing ways as the story of the Bible unfolds. All of this, I believe, points to God's power to redeem circumstances, even circumstances that are exploitive or abusive. Now, we need to be clear. In no way does this text defend those sinful actions. The point is that, in spite of the chaos that surrounds us, that we may even participate in God's plan, and that God is still at work, that he still controls and promises to bring good and his good and perfect plan to fruition. And I think that's good news, for by his grace we may endure and thrive through all situations, and herein there is hope. Hope both for the exploiter and the exploited. For by the grace of God, those monikers do not need to forever define them. There is freedom in God. And so let's read this chapter with eyes wide open, but may we also see God's power and his sovereignty on display.